Welcome back to Transcending the Rabbit Hole. Today we're diving into one of the oldest and most difficult questions humanity has ever asked. What is the nature of evil? It's a question that has shaped religions, philosophies, and civilizations for thousands of years, and one that still challenges us today. Annelise and Parker, it's a privilege to transcend this rabbit hole with you guys.
Hey, Brandy. Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one, the problem of evil. That's an age-old question, right?
Yeah.
One that is not easily answered, but I guess we're gonna speak around it. Not that we're gonna answer the question, but that we're just gonna kind of speak around it today.
Sounds good to me.
That's right. Yeah, that's probably the thing I've heard the most from people who turn away from their faith is, well, if the world's so evil, if God is so good, how could that be? How could the world be so evil? So I think
Yeah,
it's a super important thing to dig into, um, because I think people are really confused at large about where it comes from, what it is, and we've been so
yeah,
programmed with this whole Satan God thing that I think we've lost the meaning that's deeper than those figures.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, maybe you could tell us then, Annalise. What do you think? What is the nature of evil?
Oh my goodness. Well,
Solve the
I
problem for
think
us.
I think that evil is a lot like the concept of cold and hot, where y'all probably have heard this, that cold is not really a thing, it's just the absence of heat. Or like light and dark, that darkness, it's not really a thing, it's the absence of light. I think evil is not really a thing, it's the absence of or the separation from the unity consciousness or love. It's the forgetting of love. It's the forgetting of union with everything. And that just gives rise to evil. Um, I don't think that God makes evil by any means. I think we do. And we, not maybe you and me necessarily out here stirring up evil, but we as a collective, we make it when we forget who we are and whose we are and what we're here to do, which is love. I think there was some type of great rebellion thousands and thousands of years ago where things did go from being that one unity love, perfect universe type of place to being this more fallen state. And in our ignorance as humanity, we've never known any different. We think this is just how it is. And so we've got on continuing to be ignorant and continuing to act in evil ways, not even knowing what we're doing. So I think it's really complex. I can't just sum it up. What is its nature? But uh, if I was going to try, I would just say its nature is the absence or forgetting of love. Yeah. How about y'all? How do you
Yeah.
sum that up,
All
Parker?
right. Well, I think the nature of evil is a lot of things, kind of a lot of different branches, kind of all streamed into one big pot for the most part that everybody calls evil. And like Annalise was saying, like in the basicness term, I guess it would be the absence of light, like Annalise was saying, or the absence of love. Um, Or like you could kind of picture it as like the yin and the yang, like in our last episode. It's in a balanced form and everything has the opposite side, like light and dark or male and female. So I think there's that aspect of it. Um, I think evil, another, I guess, basic form of evil is service to self over, you know, the oneness of, what's it called? The law of one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I've kind of come to understand that the universal law of one is actually a universal law. I know I said that at the beginning of it,
Like
but that's what it
literally.
is. It's like we're not redundant. It really is. So there's that. And I think a lot of things that you would say angels are light or, angels or light beings would be, you know, a part of that light side or darkness, and everything else would be service to self and just about, maybe stepping on something to get what they want, something along those aspects of it. So I think that's part of it. Another thing is, I think like there are interdimensional beings, I think There's other ETs, interdimensional beings that are service to self who don't care about humanity. That sounds horrible to say on here. Like but I mean, people have heard this podcast, but they feed off of humanity through loosh. And, that's just kind of service to self. I would call that evil because when you feed off of loosh or they have loosh centers, or like imagine like New York City or LA or anything like that, all the loosh they could pull from there, that's evil. And then in and of itself. And I also think that, you can look at it through a religious standpoint where everything goes back to, I believe, the Anunnaki brothers, Enlil and Enki. And, what later transpires into Bible passages from those stories, and then the church wants to like make everything evil. That's not, of the church. So there's all kinds of different aspects that kind of boil down into one big melting pot, I believe, of evil, And there's actually,
Yeah.
we'll get into some other things, but that's getting a little long-winded, but
No, that was well said. I think you guys pretty much encapsulated what I would say about evil. I mean, I would say evil arises out of unconsciousness. Maybe that's how I would articulate it, which is kind of, I guess, more of a psychological way of processing or metabolizing evil. But I would say it's just what manifests when people are unaware of their divine essence, which is what you guys were
yeah, that's
saying,
nice. Yeah.
And as we become completely identified with the world of form, then evil is amplified. So the more unconscious a person is, the greater the manifestation of evil. Essentially, like Parker, like you just said, it's that negative polarity that is referred to in the law of one. It's that path of service to self. And yeah, I mean, not just humans, but all beings, all life can be service to self or service to other. We all have that polarity and that tension of opposites within us. So yeah, I would just say that the unconsciousness that gives rise to evil is ultimately amplified by the momentum of the collective. So it becomes so powerful in the collective that it manifests as sort of a cosmic force in the world. And I guess that's what we would personify as the devil.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
it seems like something external, which it does sort of become like a powerful external force, or, we intuit it in that way, or we experience it in that way. So the way I've come to see it, though, is that evil isn't an independent force in actuality that sort of interjects itself into our good world. But it's a condition, that arises from humanity, from within. The core of humanity is within all of us. The potential is within all of us. So yeah, I think it's the result of dualistic thinking. Like when Adam and Eve bit into the distinction between good and evil, they entered that realm of the binary mind. And that inner division just brings about that us versus them thinking, which is all of that labeling, dividing, and judging that keeps us stuck in cycles of suffering. Because, unconsciously, it perpetuates evil.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
What you said, especially, it's essentially just an unconscious or not having the awareness or the consciousness of who you really are in your divine essence. That sums it up. Because if everybody understood that they are the light of God in form, there wouldn't be evil because you would understand your power and you would then learn how to use it and how to use it for good. And something I found super interesting in a book I'm reading right now, I think it's called the Extraterrestrial Almanac, but I might be wrong, and I'll correct myself in a second on that. But I got it at Books A Million, and Brandy, I sent you that picture of it, but it's essentially a book of all the different extraterrestrial races that we know of that have been widely in contact with many people over just the years of our human story. And it's kind of all compiled into one book where they're separated into species or races. And every single species, including, humanity is one, the grays, reptilians, the Pleiadians. So these are some of the names, but every one of them is categorized as either service to self or I don't think it phrases it as service to the one, but it's either service to self or like the law of one, or service to the one. And I hate to misquote it there, but what I'm trying to say is they're either categorized as they serve their self, and that includes taking humans from their own planet, taking species from their own planet, doing whatever they will with them, whatever they want to do to serve their species, or service to the one love that that our creator God is and that we all really are. But you can't be both. But some it says it's mostly service to the one, but we do have a few factions that are still service to self. We haven't totally like blasted off to the, so I think like humanity's really going through this transition of, are we going to be a service to self species or part of the one love species in like an interplanetary context? And I think like all of the galaxy is just waiting, like, please, like make this 5D jump and choose love, choose goodness, choose the light within, not the evil around. Because it sounds like we're on that teetering point of which way are we going to go? And I know that we're going to go the way of light. And that's just it's already in motion. It's been prophesied forever. We're going there. But right now with all the evil that really is being shown, it's hard to believe that because we're seeing so much of it right now in 2026 as far as becoming aware of what's always been there. And so, yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there. That book has really surprised me in that every species is categorized. And it seems like there's more of the species of light, too, from what I've read so far. So that's good news. And, yeah.
I like how you tied in the 5D aspect because I think it all kind of connects. I'm under the assumption that this Earth is progressing through a change in itself. Earth as a conscious, and being of itself is of the universal cosmos. Think about it like that. Earth is a conscious being of the universe, and just like being upgraded, things, species, even people can be upgraded through DNA. So with this Earth and with its ascension, with the light rays coming in, it's blasting the Earth's atmosphere with these gamma rays. Plasma gamma rays are blasting the Earth's atmosphere. And the Earth's heartbeat, the Schumann resonance, is getting stronger by the day. What used to be like 4.7 hertz is up at like 80 point something hertz today. And it runs like that on a daily basis, pretty much. So I'm just saying all that to say, like what Annelise said about 3D to 5D with all this scientific stuff that's actually happening. It's starting to connect dots for me. At least that's what it seems like, so.
Like the eradication of evil, almost.
Well, yeah, like, yeah, like the Earth is progressing. The Earth isn't going to take evil along in its next step, I don't believe. That's kind of why I believe there's ETs, there's interdimensional beings that are showing up all around now. It was prophesized. It's not because the government is trying to come out and like tell you about it. They're trying to come out first and tell you their story of it. They're not telling you the real story. This is their version of the story. So, so let's just get that straight, and with that, I guess what I'm trying to say is light is winning. Darkness is coming to light. We're seeing all the darkness out on the world stage kind of coming out right now. And yeah, it seems like, yeah, this sucks. Everything sucks, but that's what has to happen. Things have to crash and burn for the new world or new systems to come into place. Think about everything that's happened, like in the world. We'll step out of it of like religious and all that stuff, but just look at the world economics. Like, think about all the things that are about to burst or systems that are already crumbling. And you look at like, why are they crumbling? CEOs on the Epstein list coming out, all kinds of shady stuff, So to me, it's just darkness kind of coming to light. and 3D to 5D. So I just wanted to say, I didn't mean for it to get that long, but that's what I wanted to say with it.
And this
Yeah.
is that book. I did find it, and it is called The Extraterrestrial Species Almanac, with a very frightening cover, by Craig Campobasso. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's just like when I think evil expanded. Those are some thoughts that come to mind.
Yeah. Yeah, those are good thoughts because it is like, reality is in a pressure cooker right now. So it's the amplification of evil. We see evil more prevalent or seemingly more prevalent. And I think it's just because it's, like I said, pressure cooker where it's being squeezed. So it's almost, like a purging so that all that's in the darkness is coming into the light. So it can seem, like evil is, getting worse in the world, or there's more evil in the world. But I'd say no, it's just becoming exposed now. So people are starting to see the true nature.
Yeah.
And ultimately, all of this, this physicality, these physical expressions, our own selves individually, the world around us, is what everything looks like from the outside. So it's like a disassociated view of reality. In reality, we are all one. So all of this is a projection out of the mind of God. We're all in the mind of God. So ultimately, yeah, everything will be, I believe, evil will be eradicated and all will be made whole again, ultimately, eventually, but it's a gradual progression. So it's not something that just, instantaneously happens overnight. And so we have to suffer through the trials and tribulations and the cyclical nature of evil being exposed and eradicated over a long course of time. But I think one of the biggest questions in theology and philosophy is why would a good God create a world where evil is even possible? If God is omnipotent, all powerful, and all good, then why allow suffering at all? I mean, why the cruelty and the injustice and all of the world's suffering? So this question has pushed a lot of people into atheism, and rightly so. I mean, it really is kind of a conundrum because reconciling an omnipotent and benevolent God with the existence of evil creates a real tension. And it caused many people in the faith to just bend themselves in knots trying to resolve this discrepancy. I've heard all kinds of horrible theology to try to explain this away or make sense of this. Because if God is all powerful, then he could just eradicate evil, right? So why doesn't he? And then if God is all good, then why would he not eradicate all evil if he could? So I don't know. How have you guys sort of processed this one? I mean, how do you reconcile a loving God with the existence of evil?
It's taken me a lot of years to get to my thought process now. But to give you to give a listener a crash course, it would be, as I was raised in the Southern Baptist faith, God was a figure in the Old Testament and Satan was another figure. And then God had that son, Jesus. And so they're all tied together. And so I couldn't make sense of it while that was my framework. But once I had my kind of accidental deconstruction of faith and understood more about scriptures and interpretations and where things come from and who were those figures in the Old Testament, I was able to release that and understand that God is not an old man in the sky that can eradicate evil with his lightning bolts or who zaps down things, that are going wrong. God is the source of all of us. We're swimming in God. We are like Brandy said, we're in the mind of God. We're just God dreaming of this reality, essentially. And we have full free will. We have the power of God within every one of us. And most of us, because we don't know we have that power, we misuse it and we create evil. We don't even know we're doing it, a lot of us. But I think a universe that's capable of unconditional love, it has to also be capable of genuine evil, because otherwise it's not freedom. Otherwise it's not love. It has to be a conscious choice. So I think everyone has the power and light of God within them. and they choose what to do with it. And when they don't know who they are and they don't understand, they misuse their power, whether knowingly or unknowingly, and create evil, and then look up at the sky and say, God, how could you do this? How could you not fix this? Not understanding they created it because they are the very light of God in this form, in this reality. So people need to point the finger back at themselves. And like Michael Jackson says, look at the man in the mirror, because we literally create our own reality. At the same time, many of us are just out here living decent lives and not out here knowingly creating evil. So it's easier for those goody good people to look up and say, God, where are you? How could you let this bad stuff happen? How do you not stop it if you're God? But even they don't understand. They are the light of God that's here to stop it. They are who they are waiting for. We all are collectively. You know, God is waiting for everyone to wake up and remember, hello, it's all you guys. Like, you guys are the lights of God in this form. You want to stop evil? Quit choosing to be something that you're not, which is your ego. Quit choosing to act out of that. So now, all that to say, I guess I understand there's not an old man in the sky allowing evil or stopping evil. There is a energetic force that sustains all of life, that is love. And when minds get involved and manipulate that force into something that's not love, now we have evil. So I say it's mostly on us, but not that we got here on our own. You know, like I referenced before in a different book I'm reading, called Nothing in this book is true, but everything is how it is. Bob Frizzle, I think, is the author. Yeah. And we might do an episode on this later, but he talks about this rebellion that happened thousands of years ago, where it makes it sound like maybe there was a point where we were all in unity and there was not evil, because everybody was on the same understanding of what is truth, what is reality, and therefore there is no evil. So whether that's true or not, somewhere down the pipe, you've got us as we are now, living in a world that is run by evil very, very much. And we look up at the sky like, God, why do you, but it's not God. There's no God in the sky. God is living in everything. And so the everything that is here needs to wake up to that and make different choices. And that's where your evil will stop. That's how I've come to see it, at least.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, a lot of what you said is how I think of it as well. First, I believe that God is, well, I believe that how could God create evil? I don't think that, like Annelise said, God is an old man in the sky creating things. I believe, I believe he is source. I believe he is the everything that's in everything, conscious. Everything is conscious. I believe that he is everything, or God, source, is everything, is in everything. He's the spark that's it within you. And yeah, so when you kind of realize that, you kind of realize, like, okay, so if there's not like an old man throwing thunderbolts at me because I've sinned, then what is going on? Well, it could be, maybe you're a very negative person. Maybe you complain a lot. Maybe you bring bad things upon yourself with manifesting these things. I know somebody in particular who really can't get out of their own way when it comes to that, and it shows in their life. Always sick, always just not. You could just tell it's just manifested, because this is when you are source, like Annelise is saying, when you realize, like, you are source here in this earthly realm, you have to understand that you can manifest just like you imagine God can manifest. Jesus says, you will do better or more precious works than I,
Greater things than
greater
I.
greater things than I, and they just kind of ties into what I was just saying. And we can get scientific with it too. Like, of my understanding is that this Earth plane is more or less a hologram. I believe myself that what you see here is not actual reality. Reality is when you will pass away, and that will probably be the main reality. This here is a, a school slash experience slash practically just what I said, and when you're in this hologram, you have free will. And when you have free will and you don't remember that you came from source and you're just here on this earth with no memory whatsoever, you start acting out in different ways, evil ways, good ways. I'm not saying humanity's evil altogether. We know people who are great people. We know people who are evil people, bad people. So it's not necessarily, I don't think, like there's this evilness side and they're taking over. It's more or less just like Annelise was saying, the forgetfulness that you actually are source and that's where you came from. And with that is like operating out of love. So I don't think that God created evil, if that makes any sense from what I was just saying. Everything operates off of light and dark duality, and it seems to be the case throughout the universe. We were talking about service to self or service to the one, or service to upholding the law of one. And I think that's just what it is. I think that everything's just a duality aspect that people can operate in one or the other. And sad to say, but people choose to operate that way. People choose, everything's a choice. So that's what's, people choose to act that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a real conundrum because even when people believe that God didn't create evil, they wonder, why doesn't God stop evil, like a benevolent, all-loving God. And it's really, it's easy to philosophize about these things and for us to sit here and think about it in terms of duality, negative and positive polarity and both sides of the equation being necessary. But I guess, like when people lose a child or something like that,
Yeah.
that is, when people really wrestle with, with the lived reality of evil in a way that, how could a benevolent God allow something so tragic? Especially people who consider themselves, good people. And I'm thinking about that book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People. I don't know if you guys have read it. It's kind of old. I think it came out in the early 80s, if I'm not mistaken. But it was written by a rabbi who his son died. And so he was wrestling with that very question, like, how could a good God allow something so awful to happen? And he ultimately maintains that God is good, but he calls into question God's omnipotence. So he proposes that God simply cannot do certain things. God is limited, because if God could prevent every instance of evil and suffering, but he chooses not to, then God's goodness would be called into question. And one thing I really appreciate about the book is that it's incredibly compassionate, and and it gives people permission to stop blaming God for every tragedy, which I never really did that, but I know some people in the church, they, everything is God's will. Even if something awful happens, God is doing it. But
yeah, that's crazy to me.
yeah, but I don't think though that it really resolves the problem, not fully. It answers one question by kind of raising another, and maybe that's true of every attempt that we have to explain evil. And it reminds me of process theology, which also rejects the classical idea that God has absolute coercive power over everything that happens. Instead, they would say God is understood to be working persuasively rather than coercively. So anybody who wants to check that out, it's Alfred North Whitehead is the father of process philosophy, if anybody's interested in digging into that. And I also highly recommend Thomas J. Ord. He's a contemporary process theologian who has some really, really accessible writing and thoughts around these ideas. But the overarching idea is that God simply just cannot do certain things because it would violate free will, which is something you mentioned, Annelise, our freedom. And a God who is love requires the other to be free, right? Because love requires allowing the other person to be free. And if God is love, then freedom is paramount. So anyway, I say all that to say that process theology sort of helped me. It was a segue really into a more expansive view of God. Process thinkers, or at least the ones that I have engaged with, would seem to hold to the view that that God is a separate being out there, though, and which is where I would disagree. I definitely agree with what you were saying, Annelise, that God is not a being; God is being itself. For in Him we live and move and have our being. But I would agree, though, that God is love, and love absolutely is non-coercive. And I would disagree with the idea that God is limited in power, though, because the power of God, as I see it, just isn't controlling. But it's always redeeming. God doesn't overcome evil through violence and force, but God does transform our suffering into redemption and ultimately reconciles all things back to Himself, I would say. So that to me is omnipotence. It just doesn't look like what we've been conditioned to think of as being all powerful. We think of power as, like force and, and coercion. And the way that I understand it, true power is non-coercive. So, in process thought, love doesn't always win. Like evil can prevail. There's a possibility that evil could prevail because God just can't do some things. God is limited. But I believe that love does win, and evil will be ultimately eradicated through a gradual unfolding of consciousness in time. And that sort of also raises the topic of free will, which is totally a conversation for another day. But for this point, I think I would just say that I think the question of our freedom is less about our conscious choices and more about the evolutionary process of becoming, because free will is a contradiction in terms. Like there's freedom and there's will, but there's no such thing as free will because the will is conditioned. People think they're out there making free choices, but they're really just being driven by their unconscious conditioning. So it's their karma that's running the show. And that really is the problem of evil in and of itself, right? Is that we're unconscious. We know not what we do. But the real freedom is awakening. It's bringing the unconscious into the light and being able to make a choice rather than being driven by our compulsions. So I would just say that God is allowing us to evolve organically along that very continuum. Like we make the choices that bring consequences, and then we suffer those consequences. And it's in the suffering that we come into alignment, right? We suffer and we learn and we grow. So in my view, God is all powerful and God is love because love is the highest and greatest power out there.
That's beautifully said.
Yeah.
I've come to kind of understand that God is not just love, but that God is total and complete loving support of whatever your will be. Essentially, by that I mean, like the universe says yes. The universe says yes to what is in alignment with that quote will of God or will of love. And so when you walk in alignment with that, like you are 100% supported, and quote God makes a way for love to win. And I do think that happens in the end. But at the same time, I think when people are aware of that and say, no thanks, not for me, I want to be in service to self. Well, now with a lot of power, because you are the light of God, now you're making this place an evil place with that same power, but in a twisted way. And something that just really, I guess, kind of shook my traditional faith several years ago was a woman in a local community of ours who lost all her children in a car wreck and her and her husband, all her children and her husband. And I reached out to our pastor at the time and I just said, I'm really having one of those like dark faith times. Like I can't get past this one because I had just become a mom of 2 myself, and I put myself in her shoes in this instance. And I thought, I don't know that I could go on loving God if that is what he did with my story. Um, and I was just really, 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 really torn up about it. And I had to come to the realization that really bad things do happen to really good people. It's not God's fault. But also, there's no old man in the sky there to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what God is. Um, God is the love that remains in that mom's heart and keeps going and living and choosing love and light despite this tragedy. And I believe in tragedy, God is upholding everybody who is suffering. I really do. I just think there's grace for everything. But I don't think there's an old man in the sky who's going to stop tragedy. And that can make somebody mad too. Like, well, if there's no God here to stop anything, maybe I just shouldn't love or think of a God at all, right? But I think people just really have to understand what God is and what God isn't. And God cannot be destroyed. So even when bodies die, even when tragedies happen, God keeps going. Spirit keeps living. Energy keeps unfolding. And that's the thing. Humanity's story isn't done. We're always unfolding. So we're still in this battle of, hey, are we going to choose evil for this realm or love? And I just think people can really let their tragedies trick them into choosing, well, I guess evil. I guess just evil's going to win because this world is dark and tragedies happen to everyone. And some days I hate this place, hate it more than anything, because I remember what it felt like to live in the formless. I remember that freedom in my spirit. I remember what it was like to be one in unity. And being here is so dense and so hard and so tragic. But I think that's kind of the point, because in the other realms where we started, everything's perfect and unity and warm and one. And there's no stories unfolding. There's no drama happening. There's no characters being played. But here in this realm, all these stories get to play out and we get to see. It's a grand experiment. Will they choose love or evil? Like the beings outside of our world are able to watch our story unfold and, will these little lights of God choose love or evil when bad things happen to them? What's going to happen? And that's what a lot of people believe, is this is just a grand experiment and they're all watching us from above in these other planetary systems, angels, different dimensions. What is Earth going to do? This is the big show. And it's really hard to choose love in a world that does look so evil. But it's just a dream. Like, this whole thing is a dream, and that's the best news to me. It can be a happy dream or a dark dream, but you get to decide. So, yeah, I'll stop there.
I like that. That was that was a good explanation.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Gosh, I don't really think I have much else to follow up with on that.
Yeah. Something that was coming up for me when you were speaking is, like God is not outside of us, external, allowing or not allowing certain things to happen. And the way I see it is that God is within us, suffering with us. So not only is God the love that is sustaining us, God is actually suffering with us. And I'm reminded of that verse, as Jesus was on the cross, God was in Christ, reconciling the world to himself. And so, God is within, experiencing all of it, the magic and the tragic. And so not separated out somewhere. And we're not like, pawns on a chessboard.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
There for his amusement. No, God is, within all of us. And and like you were saying also, Annelise, the, for there not to be duality or the potential for evil really just is to sanitize life is actually death, if you really think about it, because life is in flux, and life, by its very nature, is pregnant with potential and possibility and freedom. And so I think the point is not to, extricate or pull ourselves out of life into some sanitized state where there is no evil. It's really to be able to plunge more deeply into our humanity, into,
Yeah.
our incarnation, and learn to hold that tension of opposites in a way that, where we experience it all fully, and that we do not, get pulled into the negative polarity in the process. So yeah, but I think, I think most of us picture evil as something monstrous, like committed by monstrous people out there. But in reality, evil often appears ordinary, completely normal. And that brings up the idea of the banality of evil, which is a phrase that comes from a lady. She attended the trial of a man who was he was one of the Holocaust organizers. So he was on trial for his participation in the Holocaust. And she went there expecting to encounter a monster. Like she went expecting totally, she wanted to see, what someone so monstrous would look like and act like and sound like. And she was struck when she got there by how ordinary that man really was. Like he was just a guy following orders, doing his job, obeying the law. And that really is the most sinister evil of all when we think about it, like the everyday compliance without critical thinking that everyone could so easily fall into. We become complicit in evil when we conform to the systems and we fail to think for ourselves or take moral responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. There's historic evidence with what you just said as well with, obviously the Nazi stuff first and foremost. You could just be a part of it and not even second guess like what you're doing. These people, I mean, I guess they just took on the identity of the system, and they just operated within it with no conscious thought of this is morally wrong. This is blah, blah, even to the point where it's like, well, they'll kill my family if I don't do it, I mean, it's still morally wrong, even though that's a very hard choice to make. But you get a whole system of people doing it, and it just is a machine monster at that point. So I believe that can create a whole evil vacuum with itself, within a government system. And you can look at the communist Russia, the Soviet Union, and like when the Bolsheviks killed all the Christians that were living there, millions of Christians, that's just another thing, if you can like a system telling its like soldiers and everybody who's a part of it to operate in this way where it's non-humane, not loving, just evil, and you see people doing it, it's just a proof of what you said. It's you can lose yourself, you can lose your spark, I don't know what you would call it, lose your soul to a system and operate within its evil ways and not think anything about it. It's like that movie that just came out about the Nazis, about Russell Crowe played the general. I got to find the name of it, but he's on trial. Oh, I think it's called Nuremberg or something like that, but he's on trial at the Nuremberg trials, and they're like grilling him like, how could you do this? How could you do this? And he's like, I just did what I was told to do, and I just signed papers, man. And I mean, it's like, well, it says you ordered the death of like 1.5 million Jews. And he's like, that's what I was told to do. And I just signed papers, So just operated within the system.
I think most of our evil today is like that low key, ordinary evil that people don't even know it's evil, because they're just in the system. They're just doing what the culture does. They're just following orders.
Yeah.
Or like Sharia law, like beating women or marrying little children. That's just, but it's a system,
Yeah. I think that's why Jesus could say, they know not what they do.
Exactly. That's what I wrote that down too.
Yeah.
Like to be the same people putting Yeshua, Jesus Christ, on a cross, they thought they were just doing the right thing, just doing what their overlords tell them. And, and he's able to say, forgive them. They don't know what they do. And I have to like mantra that to myself so often because not much has changed, I don't think, for the masses. People they do what others do. They do what's cool. They do what's the system says this is how you do things. And they don't
Yeah.
look deeply to see why do we do these things and what do they really mean.
Yeah, because the programming starts so early. That's the
Yeah.
thing. We have been programmed from birth,
Yeah.
to respect authority, to be good little
Mhm.
drones and do what we're told. And yeah, so I mean, it's not a far jump to believe that someone would do what they need to do to keep their job so that they can feed their family,
Yeah.
and do what the law is telling them to do. Yeah, or be arrested, or God forbid, have their family executed, something like that. So, yeah, I mean, it takes tremendous courage and fortitude to stand against the powers that be and think for yourself, and yeah, not perpetuate evil in that way. So it's not always so easy to go
Yeah.
against the grain like that. And to me, it really does just tie back into consciousness. I think everything, like, for me, I see it in that psychological um, modality, really. Like I was saying earlier, evil really is just arising out of that human unconsciousness. That divided psyche is the core of all of our issues. And when people have no self-awareness, they just continue to project onto a world out there in a way that allows them to take no responsibility. That's what we're all doing in some capacity in different areas of our lives. It's easy enough, like to blame a devil out there and then sit back and wait to be whisked away into heaven. But that's precisely the short-sighted thinking that does perpetuate evil. It's the kind of evil that seems perfectly normal. And it's more sinister than blatant, obvious evil, really, because it hides in plain sight. And that's why I think the real antidote to evil is cultivating awareness. It's what Carl Jung called individuation, and it's the process of just shining the light of awareness into the unconscious and then integrating the shadow aspects within ourselves. And I think that really is the path into wholeness, for everyone, for all of reality is headed into wholeness, and I think that is the path. So there's a Russian writer, and I always struggled to pronounce his name, so I won't even try. But he said the line between good and evil runs right through the middle of every human heart. And that's it exactly. Like the way to eradicate evil is to stop trying to remove the speck in our brother's eye and instead remove the log in our own eye. Like, right? It's about removing our projections. That really is the only antidote for evil.
That's so true. I've been reading in my lessons in the Course in Miracles this week about how you're going to see the world that you desire to see, like you as an individual. So if you want to see an evil world, you will. You'll notice all the awful things. But if you want to see a whole and forgiven world, then you need to forgive the world for being the way it is, for uh, not living up to your expectations, and forgive the world. Understand that all is the spirit, but so many have forgotten that. So you have to forgive them and see the beauty in them anyway, the light, the love in them anyway, and that's how you heal the world, essentially. And it's hard to do when evil's like so in your face, especially when we're living in this season of Earth they full on tell you what is going on with your world leaders and epiphile things and you know child torture things, and people just keep going. And here we are. What is it now? July? Nothing's happened. There's no higher level evil that I'm aware of than that. And we're all just living in it. And that kind of just makes me sick. But what do? We can speak out against it. We can speak truth. But then I think you just have to wait for chips to fall. But I really do believe they are falling. I know the light really has come. Like we are in that downhill process of breaking that evil barrier and becoming one of those planets where we're aligned with love, not darkness. We're just having to see all the nastiness right now, and that makes it feel overpowering. Um, but yeah, I just want to throw that like encouragement. Even though like on the days that I hate hate this reality and I hate the evil that we just are forced to live in. I do remember, yeah, but it's not going to be that way much longer. You know that. That's why you're here right now. That's what all of you are doing. Like, stick to the job, you know?
Yeah, I like that a lot. I'm like I'm like you. I think the antidote to evil is just love. And love, I mean, maybe every decision you try to make, you make it with love. I know that's extremely hard to do. I mean, I have a temper in myself, so I know it's hard to just say, "Oh, choose love, dude," but like that's really the answer. Like love in the basic form is the antidote to evil. And when you can operate out of that, even like 5 times out of 10, you'll get to 6 times out of 10, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's what I'm trying to do myself. I'm not at 10 or 8, but I'm trying to work my way up. Um, and I want to kind of touch back on when we were talking about evil. I didn't mention like tragedy, and you did, Brandy.
Yes.
Um, and that is kind of hard to really say when we talk about evil. Like, what is it? Oh, it's this and that. But tragedy. Tragedy is just a earthly thing, I believe. I mean, diseases and like we'll talk about diseases for a second. Tragedy. There are some diseases that are cured already, that are gate kept behind money, behind systems and industries. That's evil. And so, there's tragedy, there's car wrecks, there's all kinds of things that when a loved one leaves or something happens that's just tragic. It's an earthly thing. And this, like I always say, this body's earthly body, the soul that's within this body will not ever die, like Annelise said. And it's such a touchy, fine line thing when you talk about tragedy, because everybody's like, they're on this, they hear me right now, the ones who didn't have tragedy, but the ones who have are like, okay, this is just too painful to even reconcile that. But, I just wanted to touch back on that. I understand tragedy is extremely hard, and I just want to be kind of sympathetic with that, but also have people understand like some of these tragedies could have been prevented, if we're not like getting poisoned by the air, food, and water that we all eat, breathe, and drink every single day, and if we could just live the way we were intended to, I bet there wouldn't be so many tragedies, to be honest.
That's so well said. Because everything you're mentioning is because somebody chose not to act in oneness. Like,
Yeah,
somebody chose
exactly.
not to
Mm-hmm.
be the light of God
Somebody wanted more money.
and trickle down to every tragedy. But I will say too, with tragedy, it happens to everyone at some point in their life. It's awful. We're all going to go through it at some point. But if you know, I mean, not just know like in your head, but know in your heart that everything is the one same spirit and you are always together with that spirit, every piece of it, even your loved ones. You're able to see, like Parker said, tragedy is just a body thing. It's not a spirit thing. My spirit can never be separated from my child's spirit, my mother's spirit, my loved one's spirit. It can't. Like, we are all connected. But these bodies and these minds can get cut up and bleed and hurt and killed. But this is a dream. This is not where it's going to be going pretty soon. So, to me, that helps. Like, tragedy is not tragedy if you don't have a separation mindset, is what I'm trying to say. But that's not how you're going to feel when you're in an earthly body going through a tragedy, of course. But when you can zoom out and realize, like, there is no suffering, there is no tragedy, because everything is one, everything is God. We can't be separated. You can't kill off a piece of God. You can't forget a piece of God. Like, we could zoom out, and make tragedy minuscule. But like Parker said, when you're here going through it, there's no convincing you of anything else because it feels so awful. But I guess what I'm trying to just say is, in the end, you can't be hurt. Nobody can. Your soul cannot be hurt.
Yeah, that's very well said. We've fallen into this world of density, right, and duality. And so within this world of form, death is a possibility. In the day that you eat of it, you will surely die. That was the mandate, right? And so death and suffering by the sweat of your brow, you will eat foods, so there's you have to work hard and you have to struggle, and it's all of this, suffering. But that's not the end of the story. I mean, resurrection is where we're headed. And that to me means that we're headed into a type of body that's impervious to death, and where all of that, suffering and struggle and strife it just dissipates. I think also, as we drop into this world of physicality and duality, fear comes online, right? Because we begin to see ourselves as separate. And so then there's that defense posture, which that's the root of all evil, right? It's that fear and like the self-protection and the service to self. It's easy, when you philosophize about service to self or service to others, you see somebody as like extremely selfish, making choices at the expense of others. But really, most selfish choices are out of just fear and self-preservation. You're not trying to hurt someone else. You're just trying to get ground under your feet, so to speak, to make it in this world that seems, daunting and overwhelming in every capacity. So, it's often said that the opposite of love isn't hate, it's fear. And that really is the truth. We fear the unknown. We fear losing control. So we look for something familiar and stable to kind of cling to. And the ego, it's not really bad in and of itself. It's just trying to stabilize us in a world that is by its very nature unstable. And so, of course, we get out of balance. Like we stay locked in a cage of limiting beliefs because those beliefs feel safer than stepping out into the unknown. And the only way forward is to just enter that cave that we don't want to enter, as Joseph Campbell puts it, right? We fear the potential that's inside ourselves. So we struggle against all that going within and facing the shadow. We don't want to do that. We struggle against that. But our fear is what is solidifying the ego or that false self. And it's what perpetuates evil in the world, really.
That's so true. And it's a lot more, like you said, more comfortable, safe feeling to imagine good and evil as it's God and Satan. And anything good, it's God. Anything bad, Satan did it.
Yeah.
That feels safer than I'm responsible for every choice I make. And I'm responsible for the reality I create around me to some degree, to a big degree. And I'm responsible for every reaction I make. And I create the world I see. And yeah, that doesn't feel as safe at all, but that's the cave. I totally agree. You have to go in there and you have to see, like, how am I perpetuating evil in my life? Because it's not just being a bad boy or a bad girl. Like there's a lot of ways that you can link up with evil and just bring it upon your own family and your own self.
Yeah. I'm reminded of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It looked good. It wasn't something evil. It wasn't something, bad. Said it looked good and pleasing to the eye, and it was delicious. And she took some and she ate. And that's what we're all doing, right? We're biting into the distinction between good and evil because it seems like the right thing to do. Seems like, the safest thing to do, the thing that's going to protect us and keep us safe. And so.
What just came to mind too to me is it's like we all got the chance to play a role here in this lifetime. Like you're Brandy here this time. I'm Annelise, you're Parker. You listening, you're Sarah, you're Bob, you get it. But what you're supposed to do with your part is, hey, what would God do if God were my part? Like if God were playing Sarah, if God were playing Annelise, what would he do right now in this situation? That's what you're supposed to do because God is playing your part. And that is how you bring this whole world back to where it should be, is the place of love. If people could get out of that ignorance and fear, and what would God do with my part? He wouldn't be scared. He would act. He would use this will of love that I have in my own heart to do something about this. And I think that's the answer. But that doesn't feel safe. It feels a lot safer to point up at a God in the sky and a Satan under our feet. But that's not the answer. Sorry.
No. Yeah, I think that's very well said. So, do you guys have any closing thoughts you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
Yeah, I have one. I thought about this as the podcast went on, and I just want to say, like, with evil comes a vacuum, and if you understand physics or understand science to the basic form of when a vacuum happens, something has to fill it. Well, okay, the stuff that's happening in the Middle East and with America is a vacuum of religious evil. Yeah, it's what it is. It's a religious system that's taken Judaism and it's taken Islam and it's taken Christianity and all given each religion their own little devils. And every little devil is filling this vacuum right now. The the Jews and the Islam, the Muslims, they're filling the vacuum of end time prophecies pretty much. They're trying to bring about their savior on the Jewish side, and Islam is trying to get rid of the Jews because they feel oppressed. And America's sitting there playing the intermediary, the middleman for this, and kind of just helping fill the vacuum, I'd say, because
America's the devil that stirs the pot.
pretty much, yes, exactly, stirs the pot. Because if you ask, you ask anybody on the Islam side or anybody who's on the Middle East, anybody who's in the Middle East, they'll say America and Israel are the devil.
Mm-hmm.
You ask people in Israel, everybody will say everybody Muslim is the devil, and some Americans are the devil. Everybody in America is just being programmed with the news, so who knows what they'll say. But I just want to, that's what I want to say. Like the vacuum that religion has created amongst three branches of the same like Abrahamic religion umbrella is what is happening in the Middle East right now. They don't like each other because of their religion, and that's it.
Mm.
And when it boils down to it, it's just what it is. It's a vacuum of evil. Everybody's serving their own little vacuum, and then the vacuums go to war with each other, and they're trying, and that's what it is. I don't know. It's just,
Yeah, we have to have an evil other out there, right? And it boils down to fear, like I was just saying, because if there is an enemy out there, an other out there that has the potential to wipe us out with an atomic bomb, then suddenly we're in fear. And it's that self-preservation. And so we're just reacting instead of responding out of our conditioning. And the news is telling us what to believe, programming us right along. So it all starts with, an evil other out there, but there are no others. So that's the issue, right? That's the crux of the crux of the problem right there.
Yeah. Or service to self too, service to system.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had someone not long ago saying something about the potential for an atomic bomb to wipe us out, and we've got to stop the potential so that we don't get wiped out, so that they don't bomb us. And I'm like,
so
you know
we'll
what?
Drop an atomic bomb on them,
Yeah, it's like one of those, well, they hate us and they're evil and they want to wipe us out, and so we, and it's fear. It's all fear mongering, and I'm like, you know what? I'd rather just be eradicated. Just drop a bomb on me than to make my heart hate another person. I don't want to be resolved to that. If I get on the other side of the TV, as I like to call it, if I'm taken out of this physical world, then I will just go on, in my evolution. My consciousness will evolve on, and I would like to take with me no hate in my heart when I go there. So, I don't want to be bombed, but I also I don't want to harbor hate in my heart and fear. I don't want to live in fear either.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think the only thought I'd leave others with maybe is, I know a lot of our listeners are either at one point are or still are, but come from Christianity and in the church. And I would just say that Jesus, he didn't come here in the physical just to forgive evil, but he came to awaken each one of us to our oneness. Like Brandy said earlier, that divine essence that we are, that that is how he forgave evil. That is how we forgive evil, as he came to remind you. It is all that one spirit. And it's an awakening. It's a grand awakening that's going to eradicate evil. And it's happening. Like, we're in it. Hooray. Throw a party. Like, this is it, you know? But it looks really bad right now. And some days it's just like, why do I even get out of the bed? You know, more crap on the news or whatever. But it just looks that way. And we're really on the rise. I know we are. But just waking up and choosing love and putting one foot in front of the other, I think that's how we eradicate evil. And it's tumbling down already. And it's not up to like just us. We have the galaxy at large, beyond on our side, helping us through this. I really believe. So just to give some hope, there is evil, but it's not going to be that way forever. Not for much longer.
Well, thank you all for joining us. If you'd like to support this show, please consider leaving us a review or subscribing to our channel on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you enjoyed today's episode, share it with a friend. And thank you all for transcending this rabbit hole with us. As always, cosmic blessings and peace.
Down with all the lies that he's told. Does the gloom and doom of nightly news haunt your dreams? So you scroll instead of sleep, 'cause distraction is key. But as long as there is still a sun up in the sky, I can choose to live on the sunny side. It's somewhere between burying my head in the sand and falling down the rabbit hole again. Takes a worried man to sing a worried song, and the state of humankind had me humming alone. Hello, common sense, I'm convinced we've lost our way, sold our attention to the system. Now there's power to reclaim, but as long as there's a heart beating in my chest, I will cling to hope that's true. I will